Okay, here we go.
Okay. So in Japan, as I said, we had these meetings with the combustion engineers who were discussing a paper I'd written in 1998 and delivered to the International Solid Waste Authority, in other words, the people that built incinerators, saying that incineration was the wrong solution for the 21st century. And they took exception to that. And we had this big ding-dong debate which went on for 4 hours. And two things really struck me, very extraordinary. I was stressing how expensive I thought incineration was. I mean, you need millions of dollars to build one of these things. And their response was, expenses, no problem. It doesn't matter how much they cost. We want to build them. We have to build them, they think, because they're landlocked, etc. They have to build them. So expense was no option. And then the second thing was, I said, well, for this huge capital expense you put into incineration, you get very few jobs. I mean, you can spend $500 million on an incinerator and only get 80 jobs, which is what they did in Italy. And again, they said the social ramifications don't concern us on this thing. So here are these engineers absolutely fixated on just making sure that every little gadget and widget was working, and the ramifications for society, how much it was costing, and the very few jobs you were getting back compared to the alternatives, didn't concern them. But it should concern the people of Puerto Rico, because the same attitudes are prevailing here. It's money to burn. That's their attitude. The Puerto Rico has money to burn. But who's going to pay for this incinerator if it's built in Puerto Rico? Answer: the only people that will pay for this will be the people, the taxpayers, because ultimately, if this is built, it will be built at taxpayers' expense, and that's going to come from the people, except they won't find out, most of them, until it's too late.
So there's a crisis.
Well, they won't find out. They say, well, where's all the money gone? Well, we spent all this capital, and it's going to take us 25 years to pay it back. And that means we have to keep it running for 25 years. We have to keep feeding the monster. And that's one of the things we've learned from Europe. Europe built all these incinerators. They don't have enough waste to feed them. And now Germany is importing waste to feed their incinerators. So is the Netherlands. So is Sweden. So is Norway. And just about to start is Denmark to keep these monsters going. But it's going to cost, it's the taxpayers. There's no benevolent, there's no fairy godmother out there that builds incinerators for people. It's going to be paid by the people that use it. In other words, if in Puerto Rico right now, communities are being asked to sign a contract, and that contract is a put or pay contract where they're required to deliver so many tons of waste a year to this plant, and at such a cost. And if they don't deliver it,
they have a fine.
They still have to pay for it.
It's a quota that they're assigning to all the municipal.
Yeah.
The bad thing about this is that it's not only the local people that are going to pay for it, because federal funds are being available for this project and for other incinerators, because in the United States the corruption with the lobbying has been so big that they have classified incinerators as renewable energy.
Oh, that's ridiculous.
And I would like you to talk about it. We didn't have a chance for me to ask you that question yesterday at the conference, but I have been hysterical when I found out also biomass, which is another way to disguise pyrolysis, which are other forms of incineration, are qualifying now on a federal level for funds.
Yeah.
And right now we have a public hearing next week, because the Department of Agriculture also has money for projects, for energy projects. This is not an energy plant, but they have a residual amount of energy left after their process that they want to sell. And so they fall into this energy funding for rural areas. The place is not even rural. You can see the city right where they're going to have it. But I think it's so corrupt, because for years we have been educated as a nation through EPA and political policy concerning environment that renewable energy was air, water force, wind, and all of a sudden now burning is renewable?
Yeah, no, it's absolutely ridiculous. Let's be very specific about this. Approximately 4 times more energy, is saved by recycling and reusing and composting compared to burning the same material in an incinerator. In other words, compared to what we should be doing, it's a waste of energy. And let me give you one stark example. I think everybody's familiar with PET plastic. That's the plastic of the water bottles. Now, 26 times more energy is saved by recycling that bottle and reusing the materials again than burning it to create electricity. So it's absolutely ridiculous to describe this as renewable energy. But that's not the only, that's just the beginning of what a bad deal this is. What about global warming? You know, one of the things that they're going to burn in, you talked about biomass. Well, this is ridiculous. Well, first of all, if you look at compost, for example, in the compost, you're going to see lots of twigs and branches and things like that. And that's carbon, that's cellulose. And when you compost, that cellulose goes down into the soil. Depending on how deep it goes, it can be there for several months or several years. But that's only the beginning. Okay, you've got that organics, you now got it under the ground. Okay, you've got the carbon sequestered, we call it sequestered, you've kept the carbon underground. But it doesn't stop there. Now the plants grow and suck more carbon dioxide, not just into the plants, but into the roots. And some of the roots are very extensive. So this carbon, again, is extensive. So it's sequestration plus sequestration if you handle biomass, organics, in the more appropriate way. If, on the other hand, you burn it, straight away carbon dioxide, straight away it's contributing to global warming. The incinerator lobby conceals that fact because they restrict the discussion between comparing themselves, incinerators, with landfills. And there you are comparing the CO2 that's liberated immediately with the methane, which is liberated slowly in the landfill. And molecule for molecule, methane is 25 to 28 times more absorbent of radiation. So it contributes more to global warming. But that's only if you restrict the discussion between incineration and landfill, instead of opening it up to reduction, recycling, reuse, composting, repair, and everything else that we are trying to do with zero waste. Successfully, I should say, in California, in Italy, in Spain, in Belgium, and several other countries.
You know, I interviewed the engineer and the natural resource director of Puerto Rico, the government, concerning this incinerator and the whole production 2 years ago. One of the things they tried to convince me was that because they were going to clean and take all the toxic stuff out, the only thing that was going to be left is what you naturally have in the air environment. But then another thing that concerned me was, because I asked him and I said, well, what are you going to burn if you're going to recycle? They allege they're going to take everything that can be recycled out and then burn. Well, what does domestic waste have to burn if you take plastic out, wood, and the composting, vegetation, material, and everything else? Well,
the answer is nothing. Nothing. And basically what they know is that once the thing is built, we'll all forget that. And they won't do all this exhaustive separation, number one. But they're still going to get an ash. At the very least, they're going to get a very toxic fly ash. And they can't have it both ways. They can't tell you on the one hand that they're going to protect the air from all the toxics, all the toxic metals and the dioxins, without admitting that those toxics are in the ash. And now you've got to be extremely careful with the ash, what you do with the ash. And it could be very expensive to get, if you do it properly, get rid of that ash properly.
But it's even worse because they admitted to me that they were going to have some kind of fuel available to keep the heat in the incinerator at the heat level that they needed to produce the energy. Well, I asked them what it meant. And I did a research on it. Some companies use diesel. Some companies use natural gas.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of companies now are using pellets. And what are pellets? Pellets are either plastic pellets that are made by the bottles, which are considered recycling because they took a bottle and recycled it into a plastic pellet, but it eventually is going to be burned anyway. Or wood pellets, and I have the case of Minnesota where they've been knocking down trees to make wood pellets so they can burn these pellets. So, and this is, since it's constant fuel because it has a certain volume and it burns more or less, you know, every container of pellets produces a certain amount of energy, they can control the heat in the incinerator. Well, just let's take the example of natural gas, which everybody is going so crazy about in the United States. The effect of burning natural gas is methane. Well, everybody's been hearing about CO2 emissions and how we should be careful about that, but now the methane, as you mentioned a while ago, is creating a situation in the ozone level also, and we're going towards burning more natural gas, which is supposed to be cleaner than CO2 emissions from fossil fuel, from the oil. But methane has become a problem now, and the EPA has been starting to develop and design rulings to control the methane. So I would like you to explain the damage of methane, that is a natural emission from natural gas.
Or in the extraction of a natural gas, may be released in the extraction. I wouldn't think there was much methane produced when you burn natural gas. Very little indeed, but maybe when you're extracting the natural gas, methane is released. I'm not an expert over all the energy, and I don't think I have to be, because there's an excellent group out there called Energy Justice. Mike Ewell, who can answer questions about biomass and all these other kinds of incineration. I've tended to focus on municipal waste incineration on the one hand, but really my main focus is what we should be doing it, not what we shouldn't be doing with it. So the sooner we can get into a positive mode, the better. And I was at a conference here in Puerto Rico back in November last year, Zero Waste Youth. And that's what the leadership, the political leadership of Puerto Rico should be looking to. They should be looking to the young people, looking for those young people that are prepared to make the effort to make this island more sustainable. They have the idealism, tap into it. And at the same time, as we saw yesterday with the collegius medicos, we have doctors and professors. You've got the intelligentsia of Puerto Rico. Dispassionate, if you like. I mean, they don't have an axe to grind in this, other than, like everybody else, being concerned about the pollution, being concerned about the waste of money, being concerned about the deception that's going on. This doesn't get rid of landfills. This is not sustainable. So you've got these two wings. You've got the young people, idealistic, zero waste youth, that should be encouraged, and you've got the intelligentsia. A wise politician would take those two forces and build upon it, and with a lot in the future. For example, this is a beautiful climate, very fertile area. It would be a wonderful place to generate more organic products, just like Hawaii. More organic material, more organic foods here. A huge market for that in the world. You literally, in the mainland, they can sell almost every gram of organic produce that is sent to them. So why isn't Puerto Rico really getting into that?
Well, I think that part of the problem is the big food companies, which import 85% of the food we eat is imported from those places. It's a big business. I'm pretty sure that you probably have been told about that, and you know on your own. We also are the haven for Monsanto Bayers and a few other companies that are doing their experiments on prime farmland that we have on this island. We have a big percent, considering there's a small percent in the whole globe that is prime farmland. We have a large amount of that small percent in the world is here, and it's being destroyed with cement for construction of homes and other things that are supposed to be part of progress, and not the food had. Well, in the 30s and 40s, agriculture was demeaned as something that if you wanted to progress as a person, you wanted to get out of working the land. So people were leaving the country and going into the cities to work in industry, and the land was abandoned. We don't have the structure of farmers in the United States where, you know, they live off these huge places. So, but there is a large group of young people that are doing eco-agriculture now.
Yes.
Here, young guys that look like hippies, but they have master degrees, and they're into this new thing about working the land, and they love it. It's a passion that's developing, that we should capitalize on that. But I would like you to explain, because one of the things that I would like you to, what can we tell to people that say, you're crazy, there's never going to be zero waste. You cannot live without zero waste. You know, the concept is never explained, and in Spanish it doesn't even explain itself the same, so people ridiculize the concept and don't understand.
Well, it's so sad that people should even feel that or say that, because nature doesn't make waste. We have a model all around us of zero waste. Nature recycles everything, and those young people are playing with that cycle now, those so-called hippies and so on, growing their own food. So one of the things I would really encourage people that don't think there's such a thing called zero waste is to compost. You take all your food scraps and put them in a compost pile, and you will find that you're able to recycle everything. And I would like to see school teachers using the compost pile as an ecosystem to teach the kids biology, ecology, using the compost pile. They can also do some experiments to test whether this so-called biodegradable plastic is really biodegradable. A kid could do that. You put the plastic in the compost pile and see if it breaks down. And those kids could also become master composters. They could be shown how to troubleshoot all the problems that you have with backyard composting, and then go door to door helping people to compost. So first of all, you establish that yes, you can get perfect recycling of organic material. And then if you look at the domestic waste stream, there are things which can clearly be recycled forever. You can recycle aluminium forever, steel forever, copper, for all the metals you can recycle forever. Glass, you can keep recycling and recycling. And paper, yes, there's a limit to how much you can recycle paper, but then you can feed it into compost. So basically, when you look at all this, the only thing which gives us a hiccup are plastics. Plastics, where unfortunately, very clever chemists have produced materials, very clever, but we're using them very unwisely. I mean, one of the best properties of plastics is they last for almost forever, for hundreds of years, thousands of years, and yet we are using them for a few minutes. A wine glass, a water glass, a water bottle, a plastic knife, fork and spoon. This is criminal. You're using a material that lasts for hundreds of years, but you're only using it personally for a few minutes. That has to be one of the world's greatest stupidities. But that's what's giving us a hiccup. It's the plastics. And of course, some of those plastics are easy to recycle, and I suggest we concentrate on those that are easy to recycle. But those that are difficult to recycle, we abandon and go back to traditional materials where we can. And in the process, by the way, if you go back, say, to China, the stainless steel and glass in cafeterias, what do you then need? You need a washing machine. What do you then need? You need someone to run the washing machine. So what you're getting is reversing a little bit of modern history. Instead of getting rid of jobs and substituting them with throwaway plastics, you're getting the jobs back because you need people to rewash and rehandle the
labor.
Labor. We need it. We need that work.
People would be interested. Maybe you know about the study, but it just came to my mind that how much it would cost to have a low-paid minimum wage workers versus continue to buy plastic disposable stuff.
Yeah.
Because I think that, I haven't seen the accounting going on, but considering the way I see people, every time they have an event or a party, people buy these real nice plastic utensils and plates that can be washed and put away for the next time. Oh, they're disposable, and I clean them and put them away, and people in the family say, "You are insane," and I say, "This is worth money." Yeah. And it's going to go, it probably will end up in the landfill because we don't see that where the recycling plastic is going right now. And
this throwaway society that we've developed, of the kind that you're talking about here, would be all very well if the planet itself was, you could throw that away. We could throw planet Earth away and grab another planet, go back to the store or get a new planet and play with that and then throw that away. But we've only got one planet, and we have to grow up now on this planet and start behaving like adults on a finite planet, and we're going to have to change behaviors. It doesn't have to give us a nervous breakdown. It doesn't have to ruin our lives. In fact, we can exploit it. For example, if you've got a group that's throwing a party, make it well understood before the party that at the end you're going to have a washing up party. It's going to be part of the whole process. It's a way of saying thank you to your host or hostess. We'll now do the washing up so that the same glasses that we use in this party can be used in the next one, and the one after that, and the one after that. So, we don't have to have a nervous breakdown because somebody takes all this throwaway plastic from us.
Or bring your own plates party.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah.
But
there's creative ways around these things.
Something impressed me yesterday when you said that we should put ourselves in the minds of 12-year-olds that were looking at the news and television and what they were seeing the world was and what we were giving them, and how their mental process, when they're supposed to be enthusiastic and developing faith in the future, and what we are giving them is going against this. Can you please explain that?
Yes, it's so worrying to me. It did occur to, I don't know when, maybe it's a few years ago. I was just thinking how awful it must be to be 12, 13, 14, 15 in these days, when you're taking in the news and you're told about global warming, ozone damage, loss of rainforest, loss of species, contamination of the oceans, loss of aquatic life, babies born with toxics in their bloodstream from the word go, running out of oil, running out of this, running out of that. They must at some point say, I've got no future. There's no future for me on this planet. There's no future. The future's gone. I mean, that's easy for a young child to go. And what would it be? For what impact would that have on a young? It didn't happen to me. When I was growing up, I had none of those things being put on my plate every night on television. None of them. I mean, oh yes, when I was in my 20s, we were all scared stiff that somebody was going to blow the planet up. Khrushchev and Kennedy, the Cold War and stuff.
The atomic bombing.
The atomic bomb. Yeah, that was very worrying. But of course, you could say that was removing our future. But this is much more insidious, much more deep-seated, and I think all politicians know. I mean, Obama knew when he was running for office. You've got to have hope. You've got to give people hope. We've got to give young people a hope for the future. And the 10 Steps to Zero Waste is a blueprint for hope. It says, let's start with the lowliest thing that we have in our lives, trash. Let's start with trash. And let's handle that in a responsible, sustainable way. Let's separate it, because waste is made by mixing. Once we've separated, let's organize to pick up the different fractions. In San Francisco, they pick up the compostables, the recyclables, and the residuals. Then we can do composting. Then we can do recycling. Then we can do reuse and repair. Then we can have special efforts to reduce the residual fraction with the pay-as-you-throw system, which simply is the compostables are taken for free, the recyclables are taken for free. When I say free, no surcharge. You've already paid for the system in your taxes. So no surcharge for compostables, no surcharge for the recyclables, but the residual fraction, the more you make, the more you pay. In Seattle, they give you a choice of 3 different size containers for your residual fraction, a small one, a medium-sized one, and a big one. You choose. But if you choose the big one, you pay more, the most money. If you choose the medium one, halfway. If you choose the small one, you save the most money.
Do you mean that in Seattle, citizens have to pay a monthly fee to have their trash picked up?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And then the government or the company gives you a container of a certain size,
Yes,
and
yeah.
you pay for the size? Because see, we have it free pickup from municipal governments here.
But who pays the municipal government?
Taxes. And
No, it's just one of the things that we have to do when we're educating the public on the problems of incineration, problems of landfill, is to let them know what the costs are for the whole program, that it's not free. You are paying for it whether you like it or not. It's going to be in your taxes. What you pay to the government has to pay for the fire, the police, education, and it pays for trash as well. It's not a free lunch here. And there's bad communication if you're not letting people know that.
It's bad decisions. Right now, we have a situation here because of corruption and bad decisions, and these great ideas that were sold to politicians, and these programs that cost a lot and are not efficient. We've had public workers lose their benefits in retirement after 30 years of working, where the model that we grew up with was you be good. You're a good citizen, you educate yourself to get a good job, you work and become a good worker, and after you finish, you can have the guarantee that you will live in your old age taken care of with your own effort. That's not happening anymore.
No.
That's one of the things, the children that you were talking about. And now, because the EPA, in the perfect example of trash and water management, because the EPA did not exercise their duty to make the governments change the waste management of the landfills, and the water sources, now we have been fined as a community, as a nation, and we are now paying in the water bill the fine because the companies that were managing our water company did not do their job and did not comply with the regulations. And that will happen again with the landfills and with everything else, and we are seeing that because now we're going to have our taxes raised to cover the expense of running government, because the government is paying all kinds of fines.
Well, in this case, it's doubly deceptive, because one of the results of stressing that these are a waste to energy facility, you take trash and you make electricity. There's probably a lot of people in Puerto Rico who think that this private company is going to build this big power station, and all they want from us is our trash. And they are going to produce electricity, and they're going to sell that electricity for a profit. And they don't understand the financing. Maybe 10 or 20% of the income of this company will be from the sale of electricity. The other 80 or 90% of their income is called the tipping fee. What the community, i.e. the taxpayer, pays for every ton that's accepted at the gate of this incinerator. That's where the income comes. That gate fee, that tipping fee, has to pay for the construction cost, the capital cost, it has to pay for the operating cost, and yes, it also has to pay for the profits of this private company. But it's all coming out of the taxpayer's pocket in Puerto Rico. Very little income from selling that electricity.
Another thing that I haven't seen considered in this proposal, and what we have been evaluating when we have these public hearings where people are supposed to be informed and are supposed to be allowed to listen to opposition, and they give 5 minutes for somebody that's against it, like Osvaldo Rosario, the scientist. 5 minutes for him to explain why we should oppose it. We've had discussions about that, and then they gave us 15 minutes. But nobody will let the opposition explain other ramifications. Like, for example, you're going to have to bring in the trash on trucks that are run with diesel. Right now, the EPA has a big program to reduce diesel emissions all over the nation in mobile units. They're not even talking about plants that have energy plants that run with diesel. They're only talking about cars and buses. And they have not even calculated how this will multiply the amount of diesel emissions through the roads on all the islands, or the wear out on the roads that it's going to make us pay more to keep these roads in shape.
Not, as far as I can see, they're not doing a full environmental impact statements. We should look at this in very, very broad terms. In fact, I would like to see in the future these assessments described as environmental and sustainability analysis. We need to know if our future actions are sustainable or not. And if they are not sustainable, they should get a cross. Just as right now, incineration should get a cross because it's not sustainable. But at the very least, let's have a full economic analysis which would look at all the things that you're talking about. But unfortunately, that's not the preoccupation of the people that want to rush this incinerator through. It's making money for a few people and fooling the rest of the people into thinking that they're not going to pay for it when they are going to pay for it, and they're going to pay far too much, and they're going to get far too little back. As I said, you can squander several hundred million on this incinerator, and you're only going to get 70 or 80 jobs maximum, whereas we can get 1,000 jobs or more with recycling, reuse, and composting.
And there'll be recurrent jobs because this is another cell that they have. Construction work.
Oh yes.
You know, they're measuring the economic development of the island on the amount of cement that we are selling.
Yeah.
That's our economic measurement of progress and how we're not selling cement. Well, how many jobs? 1,000, 2,000 construction jobs for 6 months, a year, 2 years? And then what are those people going to do once the incinerator is built? Only 80 people get to work after that in Arecibo, so they're back to poverty. You know.
And they're not very green jobs, whereas I like what Ted Ward, he runs the zero waste program in Del Norte County, the northernmost county of California. And Ted said, you know, an incinerator is one big black box, whereas zero waste is hundreds of little green boxes.